Good morning, everyone. Happy Monday, and welcome to another Wake Up with YPN. My name is Jonathan Fell. I'm the 2024 Vice Chair of your Iowa City Young Professionals Network with the Iowa City Area Association of Realtors. And today with us, we have Justin Hayes, who just recently joined the Iowa Realtors as our General Counsel. So we are excited to hear from you today, Justin, and get to know you a little bit. Before we get started, though, I do want to say a quick shout out and thank you to our sponsor, Hills Bank, for sponsoring this episode with Justin. And so with that, let's get started. Hi, Justin.
How are we doing?
Good. How are you?
I'm good. Busy.
Yeah, I bet. To begin today, Justin, we'd love to hear from you a little bit about the path that led you to Iowa Realtors,
Sure.
Your current position there.
Mm-hmm.
Did a little bit of background looking, saw that you graduated from the University of Iowa, but I'll let you kind of fill us in on the details there.
Sure, definitely. So born and raised here in Des Moines. And once I graduated from high school, I did attend the University of Iowa, did my undergrad there and law school. Undergrad, I got degrees in political science and sociology and never used them once. I went directly to law school right after graduation, did my studies there. And then once I graduated from law school, I wasn't quite sure, what field I wanted to go into or how I wanted to practice, or even if I wanted to be like a practicing attorney. So I sat for the bar exam right after graduation, and my laptop computer died during the essay portion, which I thought was a sign that, hey, maybe I shouldn't practice. Maybe I should do something else. I wasn't sure. So I'm looking around for a job, and an opening pops up with a local escrow and closing company here in town. And so I interviewed, and during the interview process, I talked about the one thing I could remember from property law, which was adverse possession, which impressed the interviewer. And so she hired me. So worked there for about 5 years. And near the end of my time there, my dad got sick. And one of the last things that he said to me was, hey, you have to take the bar exam again and you have to pass it. It's like, well, okay, if dad says I have to do it, then I have to do it. So took the bar, passed it, and then didn't know what to do. So on a lark one day, I applied for a position with the Polk County District Court. They were like, hey, we like your application. We'd like you to come down and clerk for a year. And this is kind of nearing the end. At the end of my clerkship there, a position opened up at a real estate law firm here in town. And so it's like, well, I've got a little bit of real estate background. I do, at this point, want to be a practicing attorney, so why not combine the two things? So interviewed, got the job, did that for 4 years, developed a whole bunch of gray hairs, and decided that maybe I wanted to just slow down just a little bit and kind of change my focus. And so when the position opened up here, I was like, this is the perfect opportunity for me to use the knowledge that I have, develop some new knowledge, practice in an area that I'm familiar with, but practice in a new way. And so I had to try for it, and everything worked out.
Excellent. Yeah. Well, and we're happy to have you here. That's a great path for somebody that, now is working more directly with agents and with the association. And so I know that part of what your position with Iowa Realtors is you head up the Broker Legal Hotline.
Yes.
Can you tell us a little bit about that hotline, the benefits, how it works, how long it's been around, all that good stuff?
Yep. So the legal hotline is a resource for brokers to call in or email when they have questions about things that might be in the code or may not be in the code, or situations that they want a little bit more guidance on. And so what we do is I will take your question. I will look through the appropriate resources, the code, the administrative code, guidance from NAR, the code of ethics, all that good stuff. And I will try to get you some guidance on your situation. Now, it's important to note that with the legal hotline, we don't actually form an attorney-client relationship. So there will be times where a broker may call in and be like, hey, I have this specific situation on this specific transaction, and I need guidance on how to specifically handle this, right? That's not necessarily what the hotline's for. And so in those situations, I would probably refer you to outside counsel because you have an ongoing transaction that you need guidance on or your client needs guidance on.
Sure.
But what I can do is give you general guidance, and we use the hotline as kind of an educational tool. So I can tell you generally, this is what I see, or generally, this is what the code says, or generally, like, these are what the resources say, and give you guidance on how maybe you should comport yourself. Ultimately, though, it'll be up to you to, make the determination as to what's best for you, what's best for your client, and what's best for the transaction.
Sure.
So,
excellent. And so, how, just for folks who maybe need that background, do you know how long this has been around?
Yeah, I tried to look into that. I'm not entirely sure how long it's been here. And the person that I wanted to ask this morning to see if they could verify, they popped in. I actually saw them walk by as we were starting up the feed here. So I'm going to ask afterwards to see if I can get that information to pass along.
Perfect. We always post, we always post comments ourselves after this. So we can definitely add that to the chat. It was just a curious piece of information for us.
Yep.
So, all right. So in your relatively short tenure at the job here now, what would you say are the top 5 questions or type of questions that you get from brokers through the hotline?
Number one, by far, has to be questions about the buyer-broker agreement, or just the new buyer agreement. Questions about guidance, like how do we use it? When do we use it? When is it appropriate to use, the broker-to-broker compensation form? There's a lot of questions about how do we handle compensation in this new world, right? And so there are questions about, do I need to have the buyer agreement signed when somebody shows up to my open house? Can I take them on tours of the property? And we've tried to post some general guidance on like the FAQ section of the Iowa Realtors website, but I'm definitely happy to answer those questions as they arise if you, hadn't seen the guidance or hadn't, receive the information you were looking for in a class. So by far and away, that's number one.
Yeah.
And I feel like it will be for a while until everybody really just gets settled in, right?
For sure.
Number 2 actually is one that I didn't expect, and that's receiving questions on referrals and referral agreements.
Interesting.
And there have been a variety of questions about them. So it's not like, I'm getting the same question over and over again, but, questions about, can I show this property that's down in Missouri? Probably not. Can I enter into a referral agreement? Like, who has to sign off on a referral agreement was one of the questions. Another question was a matter of whether compensation has to be paid in the event that the licensee didn't sign off on the referral agreement, but the broker did. So I've seen all sorts of questions about referral agreements that have come through recently. I don't know if that's just like a short-term thing, and I won't see another referral agreement question for a year, or what the case may be. Another thing that's been kind of a hot topic has been squatters and squatters' rights and squatters' issues. And so actually, this kind of loops back to that first interview with the closing company here. There have been a number of questions about adverse possession, which I thought I would leave in the classroom way back when I was, a first-year law student, but they've popped up here. So questions about, like, what legal title does a squatter have to the property, which kind of results from what legal title they had going into, them becoming a squatter in the first place. So, like, if they were a tenant, then they have the title that, they obtained through the tenancy, and they stay as a holdover tenant. If they're, a person who came in off the street who never actually had an agreement to, be able to habitate the property or occupy the property, then they have less legal title, right? They can probably be trespassed. And so it's just been questions about, squatting and adverse possession and holdover tenancy, which has been interesting. The other two, let's see. I suppose I've gotten questions about, well, there have been actually a few questions about insurance, which isn't really in the wheelhouse of the hotline, I would say. Some of them have just been like commentary on how high insurance rates are, which I totally get. There's just not much that, I can do about that, or that we can do.
Sorry.
Yeah. I'd love to help if I could. It's just not really in the wheelhouse here. And then I'm trying to think of what the last thing would be. I guess part of it has also been questions about the relationship between the licensee and the broker. Oh, did we lose you? Let's see. Yeah, just questions about the responsibilities of the licensee and the broker under the brokerage agreement. So,
Okay.
all sorts of stuff.
Yeah, all sorts of good stuff. And so that all kind of relates back to that second question of, like, relating to the NAR settlement and those terms and those changes. So those, I assume you'll see a lot of those for quite some time, even into the next year.
Yeah.
So can anyone call the hotline, or is it exclusively for brokers?
Yeah, right now we are limiting access exclusively to brokers. And part of the reason for that is, one, we want your brokers to be aware of what's going on.
Yeah.
Two, there were questions that would come through the hotline that your brokers probably needed to know about. So we want to limit access right now to brokers, but they can certainly ask questions on behalf of their licensees. So just so long as the question comes from the broker.
Gotcha. Okay. And just so we can all be on the same page, are you giving official legal advice through the hotline, or does this resource function in the same way that, and you said earlier, we're not in a client-attorney relationship. So expand on that just again for clarification, just so we are all on the same page.
Yep. What I am doing through the hotline is I will tell you what the code says. I will tell you what I've seen in terms of application of the code. I will tell you, if it's a code of ethics issue or if there are ethics questions, I will tell you what the code of ethics says. What I won't do is tell you what you should do.
Sure.
What I do in those situations where you're asking for specific advice on what should I do in this situation is I will give you the guidelines, or I'll give you the parameters under which you should operate. But I will tell you that you need to seek out private legal counsel that can advise you as to what you should do and how you should act, or how you should, work on behalf of your client. So It's definitely just an educational tool. It's not a, we're not in an attorney-client relationship. Again, just to reinforce that point.
Right. Yeah. So if someone does reach out to you, what is the typical response time?
Mm-hmm. Yep. What I try to do is get back to you within 1 to 2 business days. So if it's a particularly complex question, then first I will acknowledge that I've received the question, and then I will let you know, hey, it's going to take me a little bit more time to look into this. But I try to get back to you within 1 to 2 business days. I do frequently work on the weekends. So even though I say 1 to 2 business days, there's a chance you'll get an email from me on a Saturday or Sunday where it's like, oh, yeah, I really just need to dig into this question and I need to get a response to you, right? But I also don't want it to be a situation where that becomes the expectation. Rather, I just want to, set, again, the parameters, like it's 1 to 2 business days. And if I get back to you sooner than that, then I've overachieved relative to the expectations.
Right. Under promise and over deliver.
You got it.
Yep. Okay. Well, and then so briefly, as we kind of wrap up here, what do you feel or foresee being some of the legislative priorities as relate to real estate coming down the pipeline this next year? Yeah. Anything you can tell us there?
Yeah, definitely. So at the convention we had our legislative committee meeting. And so there were a couple of topics that did pop up. And in fact, a couple of them were things that we've kind of touched on here. Mm-hmm. So one of them was we are working with the property insurance division just to see what we can do to get a handle on insurance rights. Now, I'm not entirely sure, where that's going to go. It's right now we're in kind of the beginning steps. So we'll figure it out and we'll do what we can to, try to keep that situation under control. Mm-hmm. Also, there is talk about potentially property inspector licensure or licensing. So we want to get to a point where inspectors are, if they're not strictly licensed, then they are at least regulated.
Sure.
So we don't have, fly-by-night companies that'll come in here, do a couple of inspections, do it wrong, and then you'll never hear from them again. And also there's no, liability for the work that they've done, right? They collect the fees and then they disappear.
Yeah.
So that could potentially be something that we want to tackle. And then probably the other big thing is squatters' rights. So that was a topic that came up during that meeting. We are looking at potentially adding some clarification to the code or maybe some reinforcement to the eviction procedures, just so that, you know, folks who don't have a right to property shouldn't have a right to property. Like, they don't have a right to occupy somebody else's property without that person's permission. There should be a procedure within the code to not necessarily streamline the process, but, you know, to make the process more clear and more transparent for everybody. And I suppose make it even just a little bit easier when you've got that holdover tenant who you've, you know, notified that they need to leave and they just won't.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Sorry, I was taking some notes. Yeah, no, I think those are all some great and great things for us to look forward to. Anything and things that we can follow. And obviously, if you're getting questions about them, they're issues that folks are dealing with. So yeah, absolutely. Well, anything else we missed as we've been chatting that you feel like you want to leave us with today before we kind of see if we have any comments or questions?
No, I mean, I'm here in the office. I do answer my phone. I do respond to emails. So, you know, feel free to reach out to me if you'd like to. We can chat about the weather. We can chat about your questions, or we can chat about the Iowa Hawkeyes, who unfortunately lost this weekend. So.
Yeah. Well, and I'll second. You're very approachable. It was great to see you at convention this past week, and nice to meet you in person there. And just a couple of comments just saying thanks for the super great information, and thank you, Justin, for being with us today and getting to meet you and put a face to a name. That's always helpful for folks, I think, who you know, hear people's names throughout the association, but don't always necessarily get to meet people. So well, then, yeah, thank you so much. Just a quick little reminder before we end. The hotline hours, and Justin, correct me if I'm wrong, are Monday through Thursday, 9 a.m. to 11 and 1 to 3. And then on Friday from 9 a.m. to noon.
You got it. That's perfect.
Awesome. All right. Well, we will put some of that information in the chat. We'll also probably link to that FAQ page that you talked about at the Iowa Realtors website. And thank you again so much, Justin, for joining us this morning and for giving us some great information.
Thank you. I appreciate your time.
Yeah, thank you. Have a great day, everybody.